Okay, so you have been gifted $5,000
5K
from the gods or from your job. You've worked,
whatever.
and you want to buy something.
Yes.
You might, and so we were talking like, would you buy like a, let's say, would you buy a vintage guitar? It's how it started. Would you buy a vintage guitar or would you buy a vintage amp? Let's start with that one.
Whew.
This is gonna spiderweb out.
It's tricky,
What would
man.
you do?
I mean, 5K is not a ton in vintage guitar dollars.
Sucks.
So,
Well, man, it opens up like all the silver faces of Fender Oaks.
Yes.
Obviously, like that's well below $5,000.
Well below.
And a lot of the great Fenders are open, amp wise.
I feel like a lot of the blackface stuff you're into. Like
You are.
could get a nice deluxe.
You could get a great, like you get well under like some of
Yes.
this price. You get some of the even some of the old vibro verbs and stuff.
Right.
You could find maybe in pretty great in Voxes.
Yeah. So maybe you do that. Heck,
That's where I kind of live. If I'm just looking at vintage guitars, because vintage guitar, what am I looking at for $5,000?
maybe a Jazzmaster Jaguar.
Okay, that's pretty cool too.
You know?
Yeah, because there are some great ones. I saw a great Jaguar and Reverb the other day. It was like with hang tags, and it was like 5,500 or something. It's like 3-tone sunburst.
So you're in that ballpark.
Oh, it's confusing. So I don't know. So it's really which itch do you want to scratch? Like, but I'm sort of weird about things. Like I think if you don't have a great amp, you're missing a huge element.
I agree with that. I guess for me, I would have to answer first. Am I buying this to play or as a collector?
It's collector/seller.
Yes.
Yeah, because I think some of those great deals out there right now are the vintage, like sort of offsets.
Right.
Because I mean, like 5K right now, like if you're trying to buy a Strat, you're looking at like 75 and up.
Yeah.
You know, like you're that's really weird to say because we saw like some 71 Strats for like $10,000,
Right.
which just seems insane.
A little bit.
We talked about this on a video previously, I know.
Yeah.
So it still just haunts me. I'm like, $10,000 for 3 bolts? I don't understand what happened to the universe. Have people lost their minds? Somebody's on Reverb with their like listing, like it's worth it. I'm like, no, it's not. It's just anyway.
I mean, hey, that's
But
what you love.
I don't know. And then we started talking like it's spiderweb. I was like, let's say you have $5,000. What about a new piece versus the vintage as well? Let's stick with amps for a minute. So for $5,000, you could for new you could get one of the best 2-rock heads or a combo.
Yeah.
I would get the heads. I think the heads. There's something about some of the tube layouts and they're
It's sort of magical. I would be tempted to say that's the way I'd go, especially if it was for my own playing and enjoyment.
if it's for your plan, if you're not looking at this as just like, I want to put this money here, and then
Right.
like 5 years later I want to make more money, not necessarily. We had like a used 2-rock Bloomfield, like it was a 112 speaker cab and the 100-watt, 50-watt head came in. We sold that for a great price. It sold like within a day.
Right.
Pretty much got the cabinet for free, I think, on that price. But those things sell amazing quick, and they sound fantastic.
Yeah.
But then, do you want to have that, or do you want to have this cool vintage gear?
It's tricky.
I know it's like
Hard. It's a hard decision.
because you know me, like I like old weird things too. Even
Right.
like some of the old, like I asked you nicely to drive a little bit out of your way on the way back home to Nashville to pick up that Brian May Vox
Yeah.
AC30. I just wanted to have the one knob thing. I only made a few of them. And I wanted it. I don't know why. I play it, and it's fun. It's
It is fun.
It's completely useless in so many ways, but yeah, there's that itch that you want to have that vintage piece.
Right.
It's and let's jump over to a guitar then. Let's say you have $5,000 for a vintage guitar, or $5,000 for a new guitar. That opens up a lot in the new guitar world.
Whew. You can get a super cool custom shop. for
Pretty much like
$5,000.
top of the grain,
Yep.
custom shop, like team built
Right.
is like right.
It's in your
There,
grasp.
or an amazing PRS,
Right.
or a pretty amazing Gibson.
Yes.
Not the top.
Not the top tier.
The fact that the Murphy age ones now are like, oh my god, they're like $12,000 for some of those.
I think I'd be really tempted to look for an offset, a vintage offset.
And we were talking about that.
Yeah.
It's because the Jazz Masters are a little bit higher. The Jaguars are still attainable.
Right.
Like 65 Jaguar
You could do.
with the case and the hang tags.
Yeah.
And that's pretty cool.
There's just something,
It's
a lot of mojo for that.
it's tough. Like as for a player, in some ways, like it's hard to go wrong with this. Like picking up a custom shop.
Yeah.
or one of those core pieces you've been eyeballing for a while. Like I got to have that, and
If I had no high-end guitars, I think I would be going custom shop.
yes,
But owning a few custom shops,
yes, you do.
I think I'd be looking at offset vintage Jaguar, something like that.
Okay, then let's take this a little bit further. Then let's say you had $10,000. That's when you start entering like the real entry point to like the vintage
Right.
gear of like, and still like we're like just touching the surface. It's depressing. Oh. Like so you had $10,000. Like we were talking about the old '59 Baseman.
Yeah.
And stuff like that, because you're like, oh, like if I had 5,000, like you can't get a good one for $5K.
No, you'd have to get out the crazy, just trashed one.
Because I've seen a few for $5K that's been like, it's been retolexed and
Yep.
recovered, and the
New
caps
tweed or whatever.
and
Yeah.
everything's been, the speaker's not original
Right.
usually. Obviously the tubes are not original.
But at 10K,
At 10K you can probably get one that's completely original with maybe a few like master grade like sort of replacement parts. God, it's a lot of money.
I'd be tempted though. How cool would that be?
I mean, I would do it if I had $10,000.
If someone was like, "Here's 10,000, you got to spend
as
it
a
on gear."
side note, everybody that watches this channel like, knows like I've had a thing for Languedoc guitars, and like I've like emailed them once. I did send my first email, and I want to be on the list, and then he's like, oh, like they're like $10,000. That seems insane. And I was talking to this fella just yesterday that came in the shop. He bought an amazing guitar. I was really sad to see it go, but he's such a cool dude. Future doctor. I guess he's in his residency in DC.
There you go.
It's so weird. He seems so young to me, and he's going to be cutting you open. Anyway, then I find out, oh, no, that's not the right price. That was in 2009, because that's when he last updated his website. I was like, oh, so I've been on this like grand illusion. It's like, so it's a lot more than that.
Wow.
A lot, not just like a couple thousand, just like a lot more. I was like, oh, that just sort of changes that. I'll just see if I still get a call back from him. I'm curious, because now it's almost like a mission to see if like Baxter can achieve a Languedoc.
Can you achieve one?
Like he'll be like, I'll be one of like the 450 people that actually care about this, but it's really fascinating. But that's an expensive piece for a new gear, because let's say you're entering, let's say it's $15,000. I'm just going to throw a number.
Right.
That's a lot of money.
It is.
That's a lot, and you're really in the vintage gear. But back to 10.
Back to 10.
59 Baseman. 100%. I'm into that.
Yeah, I could do that.
I think you could get a good one for 85.
That would make me pretty happy.
You need to run pedals with that probably. Maybe just like, no, maybe not. It's so
Maybe
good.
not. Maybe an attenuator.
I was just thinking to attenuate because it will kill your face.
Because
where's that? Like, here's the 412s over there. Yeah, with the Baseman.
Just get yourself a plexi shield like Joe Bonamassa.
I want so many things like Joe Bonamassa. That's sort of like my fantasy setup. Nerdville.
Yeah.
It's like the king room to go to. But yeah. So the 10K, like you can have anything new as well.
Pretty much.
Pretty much you've entered like
sky's kind of the limit.
That's the top of Gibson, the top of Fender, the top of PRS. I mean, you can go a little bit higher.
Right.
When you start getting crazy. When I spec'd out my PRS private stock up at the factory, I think it was like $14,000 because of course I have ridiculous taste. Not good, just like I want all this crazy wood that's diseased. I want that. It was gorgeous. I was like, I need that with F holes in it too, because I want to spend more money. But I didn't buy this guitar. It was just fantasy. It was like fantasy football.
I mean, if I had 10, I think I'd be tempted to split it.
Ooh.
I think I'd be tempted to go like nice custom shop and like vintage Jaguar.
Ooh, that makes so two guitars.
Two guitars.
Or what about like vintage Jaguar and two rock?
Either way, I feel like I'd have a harder time plopping that 10 grand down on one thing as opposed to.
Or you could like find, or some of those like boutique makers out there that are like really high. You could find some of the, like Languedoc I just mentioned. There's some of those Echo Parks that are sitting around there that are like the fantastic ones that people lose their minds about.
Yep.
Pre the flame wars of he and Joe. Who,
right.
That stuff's really funny when you see like grown men just on the internet go to town on each other.
It does something to you.
It's just weird to me. I like some of the guys like just like post and ghost, like just like, all right, I'm out, I'm done. Like we like to actually talk to people when you say things if you can. Like some things when there's like 1,000 comments we can't get to them all, obviously. But it's nice to like it's usually me or you.
Yeah.
Just like it's pretty much 100% me or you. Because, I mean, unless Derek's just like trolling us and doing that behind the
Which
scenes,
is
like,
occasionally
me, Baxter, think you bad. And then I'm like, great, now I have an enemy. But I don't know, yeah, if I had $10,000, that's because that enters like the real vintage world of like.
It does.
Yeah, you're getting into some Gibsons there too, and and like you can get some cool Telecasters. You know, and have some money left over maybe too, because you can get into some of those like late '60s Tellies.
Ah, that would be
cool
too.
In that world, to like a '67, '69.
That might be the way to go.
I don't know. That's the fun of it. That's the battle we all like. You know, everybody that we work with, like they work really hard their whole lives. You have sort of amount that you want and can spend, and you know, I still have a couple master built custom shops I have to get for myself before my days here are done. The paint jobs are going to be custom. It's the Maggie and Nessie set. It's
That's gonna be awesome.
I'm not kidding. My wife says like, well, why not do two guitars? Why not do like the Maggie guitar and the Nessie amp?
Ooh.
Get like, you know, a hot rodded like Champ with a 10-inch speaker or something like that sort of like Loch Ness Monster green, which is a bright green in my mind. I think when Nessie was young, and then my Maggie, the unicorn, shell pink, beautiful Stratocaster with a horn. But with her painted on, like I mean, I'm sure Derek's pulled up plenty of pictures to embarrass me from this one. But that will be created one day, the Maggie Nessie set, and that's gonna be a lot of money, and that's gonna be expensive.
I feel like I need something strange to put on custom shops now. I have to think about it.
One day you'll get there.
One day I'll have it.
But yeah, so let us know what you do. I think that's kind of like the gambit there. It's exciting to think of. Like if you had $5K, like let's just be stupid. You have 10, because we're not going to 20, because that's crazy. I don't want to go to those numbers. We know you're getting vintage guitars at that point.
Yeah,
like,
no, you definitely are.
You're in the world of 60s.
Yes.
Like Strats and Tellys, and you're in the golden era once you have 20K to spend on a guitar, and it's God bless you, and that's awesome. And we do it sometimes too. We have to sell them, unfortunately.
I know. So what would you guys do with 5K? What would you do with 10K? Are we insane for even thinking about it?
And don't say put it in your Roth or your IRA or any of that stuff.
It's not fun.
No Bitcoin either. Bitcoin. None of that. We don't care about that. Just guitars.
Only guitars and amps. That's what we care about.
Savings. What are you, crazy? Yeah, thumbs down to savings. Off with your head. But yeah, that's it.
That's it. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the bell so you don't miss videos in the future. We'll see you guys next time.